It's a big year in 2023, Rex Hoggard.
I'm going to go a little bit different than what we were just talking about, because simply I look at what Rickie Fowler has done really over the last 3 years. He's gone through swing coaches, he's gone through caddies, he's trying to find answers, and they just haven't been there. And it seems like every time he gets close, he takes a step back. You look at what he did, even to start this fall. He finishes tied for 6th at the Fortinet Championship in Napa, misses the cut the very next week in Las Vegas. Finishes tied for 2nd at the Zozo Championship, T34 at the CJ Cup. It seems like every time he seems to get some sort of momentum, he just falls backwards. Yeah. And it really makes no sense whatsoever. And I've spoken with his former swing coach about this, John Tillery, and the skill is there. The talent is there. We've seen it. You win on the PGA Tour. You win multiple times. You win around the globe. You know what he's capable of doing. At this point, it almost feels like a mental hurdle. You go back to the things that matter. And look, Rickie has told me this really for months, if not years now, that it's not really the swing that's the issue in his opinion. It's that. It's the putting. It's the way he's been able to perform on the greens. It has not been that magical touch that he had earlier in his career when he became Rickie Fowler, when he became the guy who wore the flat brim and the bright the bright orange on Sundays and everything that made him so special. That's the part that hasn't been there. And I think more than anything, it's not technical. At this point, it has to be a mental hurdle that he just can't get over.
And isn't that amazing? I remember speaking to him at Kiowa, and it was the same thing. I said, you know, Rickie, are you still trying to ingrain these swing changes? And no, I just can't make any putts. We're talking about someone who, for a time, was the best putter on the PGA Tour. And I kind of teased him that week. I said, hey, I still think you have a wonderful putting stroke. And he was like, thank you. But you're right. When the putts don't go, I mean, when you're working on your swing and trying to incorporate swing changes, which he was for a time, something is going to be left wanting. You can't put all of the hours into swing changes and your putting, and it's possible that there was some neglect there, or at a minimum, Rex, a loss of confidence on the greens.
And I'll go back to last week. Victor Hovland talked about this. He put it very, very clearly about what had happened in his game. He felt like his ball striking was so poor. He spent the majority of this year trying to get better at that. He saw weakness and worked on it, and as a result, his putting fell off. Very, very similar to what Rickie Fowler is going through. And you're right. These are things that almost every professional golfer goes through. In Rickie's particular case, though, it was always imagination. You and I both have had these conversations with Butch Harmon, who he has worked with in the past and continues to work with. This is not a technical player. This is not someone who sits up over a putt and tries to paint by numbers. He's going to stand over a putt and see the line and feel it. It's art. It's not science when it comes to Rickie Fowler. And I think over the last few years, he's tried to make putting a science, and that's just not working for him.
Traditionally been a very aggressive putter. Lexi Thompson, on the other hand, has been a bit of a hesitant putter, in my opinion. She's my player who I think needs to have a big year in 2023. You know, she spoke at the Pelican Media Day, and she talked about these close calls and said these are not failures. These are learning experiences. Well, she's had a lot of learning experiences since that last win in 2019. She's been in the hundreds in putting average on the LPGA Tour for 4 consecutive seasons. And it's hard to win on a Sunday when you don't look comfortable standing over a 4- and 5-foot putt. She continues to put herself there, which I think is remarkably admirable and speaks to her toughness and the strength of her chin. But, man, it's been tough to watch her on Sundays, but she continues to answer the bell, and for that, I give her a lot of credit.
I do give her a lot of credit, and I'm going to come at you with this one a little bit on it, because what we're doing here is the sports media thing, right? We're looking at you are what your record says you are, and in this particular case, you're not a winner since 2019, so that's a problem. I was listening to a podcast on my way up here yesterday who was talking about which quarterbacks in the NFL are playing well and which aren't, and they're basing it entirely on win-loss records.
Right.
And the idea is what a terrible stat to use for that particular position in football, because there's so many other things that factor into this. I would argue the exact same thing right now. You looked at his record. We just put it up on the full screen. She's had a really, really good season.
Amazing.
If you took the name out of it and you put Rory McIlroy's name above that graphic and you said, well, did this player on the PGA Tour have a bad season? Anybody not named Rory or JT are probably going to be like, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. No, I didn't win, and that's a problem. We just talked about Cameron Young. He doesn't like coming in second. I get it. But in this particular game, if you're basing your analysis on win-loss, there's so many other things that factor into this. You get a bad bounce, you get a bad side of the draw, you have a bad putting day, whatever the case may be. I think she's heading in the right direction. You're right. I'm sure in her mind she wants to get that win. But, man, you look at her season and you're like, you've put a really solid season together. You don't have to change anything up at this point.
I think you're right. And the story in pro golf a lot in the last year or so, maybe forever, has been the bounce back, the resilient player, the player who finds victory after a long drought. You think about a Mackenzie Hughes, for example, or a Charlie Hull, Russell Henley, Xander. I mean, look at Shane Lowry. He won, the BMW PGA Championship, and that was his first win since winning the Open Championship. Tommy Fleetwood getting it done in tears after winning in Africa earlier this year. So I think that, if anything, Lexi Thompson has shown that she can bounce back from missed short putts or mistakes or close calls. I mean, that really, along with her 11 LPGA wins and major championships, has been a part of her makeup, big picture anyway.
And I think I've said this about Tiger Woods quite a bit in the past. I'll go back to the idea that, look, you can lose your health. You can probably lose your confidence if you're professional and you're not putting well or whatever the case may be, but you never lose whatever that DNA was that made you a champion, be it a major champion or otherwise. In this particular case, Lexi still has all of that DNA. She has all of that talent. She still has all the 5 tools. For it to fall in place, you need a little bit of help sometimes, but there's nothing about her now that's a different player now than when she did win in 2019.